Why the Netherlands is not longer the Netherlands. How to be prepared for what is coming and what you could do about it based on your personal preferences and options you want to give to yourself. So, in case you have been watching similar videos, if you're just like me, Dutch, and you might be asking yourself why I speak English, because this is not only about the identity of the Netherlands. We see this pattern coming back in so many other European countries. We see it in England, we see it in France, maybe in Scandinavian countries as well, maybe in Germany. And that's exactly why I decided to continue with my videos in English, because what this is really going to be about is that we are losing the identity of our culture, heritage, our spiritual heritage, the land we will be living on, and that something that is really part of who we are is kind of like we are selling it to the devil. And really what that means is, of course, what I will be explaining to you in this video. So in case you really might be wondering what is all this noise, I'm actually sitting here in the old town harbor of Middelburg. And in case you don't know Middelburg, that's why I believe this is such a beautiful location for today's topic. Middelburg was just as Amsterdam very important during the Dutch Golden Age, during the 17th century, because it was a kind of like a capital or a main hub during our maritime history. I come back to that in a moment. So right now it's kind of like 4 to 5 before of wind speeds that we have. And what that means is that currently it's like hurricane, it's typhoon season on the Atlantic Ocean, and that's why we get a little bit of wind here as well. And if I could show you around, basically I'm just really overlooking the old shipbuilding wharf that we used to have. So what's happening in the Netherlands? If you're Dutch and you stumble upon this video and you prefer to watch something in Dutch to see what exactly is going on here in this country, to see things from a bigger perspective, then I can highly recommend you go and watch the videos from Hoop Helder Hulleman. He's Dutch, he is a jurist, a judge, and he really dedicates his time to bringing up all these topics that are so relevant nowadays. And of course he also has like a couple of things on what exactly it is that you can do about. So to bring everything a little bit into context, basically I started to wake up probably back in 2007, 2008. I was working always really hard. I was in college. I studied shipping and logistics management back in Rotterdam, and besides my full-time studies I had like a part-time car cleaning business. So I was always working very hard, stepping into my entrepreneurial endeavors and making sure I had my independence. And because I was always working hard, I was able to travel quite a bit. I was able to drive my own car, enjoy a sailing boat and whatnot, and that's why eventually I decided to go on a journey and travel to Peru. When I was in Peru, I really started to open up my eyes, like what exactly it is that we are doing here in this modern cultures. Like we're working hard, we are racing to some kind of destination that we never really seems to be able to reach. We are spinning our wheels on a bloody rat race, always wanting to have more, but yet when we have it we still are feeling empty, depleted, and left with major amounts of voice of unfulfillment. When I was in Peru, I really started to open up my eyes, like wait a minute, the people there are very happy with much less than what we have here in first world countries. So I came back to the Netherlands and I started to create some level of resistance against my existence, like my studies, my work and all of it. Yet I completed my studies and I started to work for a Dutch shipping company, and I left my car cleaning operations. I sold all my equipment because I thought, I went to college, now I have to go and do something with it. And there I found myself trying to climb a corporate ladder, and eventually I was taking on more courses in regards to custom consultancy, and then I was working for different international corporations in the Netherlands in custom declarations, customs consultancy, and I felt very depressed. And that's what I decided, you know, I gotta go back and move back into this field of self-employed entrepreneurship, and that's why I decided, like, I need to become an internet entrepreneur and get my own freedom and independence and go and chase chase money. That's what I was doing, and once I was having money, making money, I still felt very, very empty, left with major amounts of voids that I couldn't fulfill by only spinning my wheels harder on this endless treadmill. And that's why from probably 2010, 2012, I really started to dedicate my time towards spiritual developments, and I found myself in the fields of shamanism and going further down this path. So then I moved to London, I moved to England, because I hated so much the things that were currently going on in the Netherlands, the governments, the systems, and I was pushing against it, and I resisted every bit of it, and I felt trapped within this society. I felt highly trapped, like I couldn't breathe by all the structures and the controls and the social control, and that's why I moved out. I got into a relationship, I lived in London in England, and although I must admit England itself as a country has a very beautiful and rich history, the land, the nature, the national parks, the small tiny little villages, you can really sense and you can really taste that they kind of like to preserve their old culture, their heritage, and everything that England has from back in the day. So coming back to, you know, all my findings when I was like living in England, what I started to notice is that I felt kind of like uprooted or displaced within myself. Like I couldn't really connect, although I must admit England has a really beautiful culture, there's a lot of richness, there are beautiful so-called spiritual energy centers in England like Stonehenge, Avebury, Glastonbury, you got Scotland, you got the Lake Districts, you got so many regions that are absolutely superb, and I must give it to them. But for me personally, as a Dutch, I did not really feel kind of like rooted within myself. It didn't really have to do with the land, but I felt like, you know, I'm kind of like a tree from a swamp that is trying to, you know, kind of like plant his roots on a land he's non-native to. Like if you look to England, for example, England has all these so-called trust, like woodland trust, for example. And what they're trying to do is they're trying to protect the woodlands against non-native English trees. These seeds are coming over from different parts of the world, but what non-native trees are doing to the land, they create so-called pollution. They can create a virus, because then the native trees might actually be dying, they might actually be destroyed by the non-native trees. And I felt like a non-native tree to their land, and that's why I didn't really feel very grounded. I felt uprooted, and that's why I didn't really function very well. I felt disempowered. In shamanism we call this displaced or spiritual displacement. I go a little bit further around this aspects a little bit further down this video. Then last year I returned back to my so-called ancestral lands. I made another video about that topic. But of course now I see the Netherlands has so many other cultural discussions and debates, and we have got the financial system, we got the social system, and all these things that are currently going on. I don't really want to go too much into that, because if you're Dutch, if you're non-Dutch, you're probably thinking, well, this doesn't really concern me. But if you are Dutch and you want to know more about it, once again, go and check out the videos from Hoop Helder Hulleman. He goes very much into depth in all the cultural challenges we now have nowadays. Because actually I want to focus more a bit on solutions that you could explore and develop further. But if I can really brief touchly on these kind of like cultural issues and challenges we now have, and the social and the financial system that kind of puts a lot of pressure on the people trying to live here. First, we have the issue of overpopulation. And we could say, well, it's the fault of all the people we are bringing in, of the working immigration waves that we are having. Once again, that of course been an issue in regards to our social system and socialism, because we have, let's say, different parts of our society. Like a lot of people, they say, you know what, there's a social system in place and I want to go and benefit from that because I see there's absolutely no point of me working very, very hard, because I work hard. This tax system is going to work against my favor. And that's really what a lot of people, or Dutch people, really realize, like it's actually pointless. Maybe it's better to work 4 days a week than working 5 days a week, because my fifth working day of the week, I get taxated more money on that day. So it's better if I work 4 days a week and then have 3 days off for myself. Or there are other examples, like if you work less, you make less money. You have the rights, you have the obligation that you can benefit from the social system the government has in place. And that's why you have the right to apply for a social house provided by the governments, and you get loads more benefits. Now you can say yippee-ki-yay, you know, the government is there to help me. But actually, if you really look to this agenda behind this, it is actually there to make people weak and dependent on the system, because if you're weaker and dependent on the system, you can be controlled. You can be controlled. You trade away your freedom and independence to a system that will always be there to get after you, to be against you. So that's one issue. So Dutch people, they don't really want to work that hard because it's pointless. You get taxated on the money you make, and it's absolutely bonkers, it's ridiculous. So it's a system that's always against your favor. So then what is happening? You see a lot of foreigner investment banking institutions. They buy up a lot of our real estate, and this real estate is being used to foreigner immigration, working immigration coming in from Eastern Europe and other parts of the world, because these people, they really want to work hard because they can make more money here and then bring back this money to their own country. And it's nothing to do against these people that come here and who are willing to work, do the work that we are not willing to do. But that is causing, let's say, issues within our society and culture and financial system, social system and whatnot. So that's one part that we see in our economics. Then we have the part like, wait a minute, now we have like an overpopulation. Now what we need to do is to fight and to battle against this overpopulation, is to get rid of our own farmlands, is to get rid of the farmers, because we need that land to build houses, because that's once again another issue, is the housing crisis that we have. There are simply not enough houses. And what we see is that the Dutch people, they get taxated out of their own houses, out of their own properties, because they simply cannot longer afford it. Those who are on the property market, it is simply impossible to get your hands on a house and to get a roof above your head. If you're in that position of wanting to buy your own house, be prepared to always outbid your competitors on the housing markets. So the cost for housing is just absolutely crazy. Then you're left alone. If you're working hard, you're working full-time, you have a decent income, you have a decent paycheck, you work for a company or whatever. If you have a decent paycheck, then the social housing is not longer relevant for you because you earn too much. So you're left alone on the private housing market, which is too expensive. But then your income is just not enough to afford a house on the private market. And then you're left alone on not being able to rent from an agency, but from a landlord directly on themselves. But now landlords are now also taxated on the dividends they are making from owning property and buy to let, basically. So also this is going to be slaughtered out of our market. And these are just really like a few examples. We can go on for 30-60 minutes on kind of like the issues that we have in this country in regards to our social system, cultural, spiritual heritage, our history and all of that. But then what we also have is really like the left liberal activations or activism that we see, who are against our own cultural heritage, our history. They say, you know, we have a history in maritime history that we have. We see it in Amsterdam, we see it here in this town like Middelburg. And they say, well, you know, we carry a karmic debt within our collective consciousness in regards to the slave trade and all of these things. Then, you know, the governments can never give enough of their apologies to our history, because activism can always come up with another idea to go against our own cultural heritage. This is a debate that's going on for God knows how long, and it only goes worse and worse and worse. And what we're seeing is kind of like a positive discrimination. And what I mean with positive discrimination is that now we need to tiptoe around all the so-called weaker people in our society, in our culture, who claim that they are the weaker part of the spectrum, and now we need to tiptoe around them because they might be easily offended. So now we have a positive discrimination against foreigners. We have a positive discrimination against, let's say, the Islam or Turkish or Moroccans. We have positive discrimination about all the different kind of genders that we have nowadays. And the list can go on and on and on. Yeah, like the positive discrimination against women, for example. Like first we had the uprise of emancipation. Then we had the uprise of feminism. And now we have the uprise of wokenism. And it's only there to divide men, women, families, the family structure, and it's the whole agenda of divide and conquer. And I think I have said enough about this. I don't really want to go further because once again this is going already very, very broad. So counting all these issues together, you might say, well, at least we are safe here. At least we're still comfortable here. We still have a roof above our head, and compared to the rest of the world, we are still pretty good. We have our comforts, we have our luxuries, and it's still pretty good. And you might be right. You might be right if you look to other parts of the world where actually conflict is going on, war, poverty, racism, discrimination, first world countries, Eastern Europe, the Middle East. Then you could say, well, we still have things pretty comfortable. But within the subconscious of our collective, there is a war raging against humanity. You gotta be pretty, let's say, open-minded and pretty spiritual, developed, emotional mature to actually start realizing all these things that are currently being played out against humanity. Without going into, let's say, a whole conspiracy against it, I just really want to leave it, because then the question, okay, you know, I don't want to, you know, sounds like a conspiracy theorist, I don't want to sound like doom and gloom, but I want to point out, like, hey, you know, we live in a dark age. And it's not all rainbows and butterflies at the moment. Those who claim it's all love and light and they're shooting rainbows out of the butthole, I think they need to come to terms with reality. So there are options. What can you do about it? Of course you could say, you know, I'm going to pack my bags and I'm going to move out to another part of the world where I get better tax benefits. You know, all the upper class people who have made their money here in this country and who can work from their laptop and who can work location independence, it is their true right to take their money and they move out, because their money gets highly taxed in this country and there simply is nothing left behind because of the lower class society, the weaker class of our culture that is being funded by the government through our socialism. And then the upper class will say, well, you know, I don't really want that my tax money is going to this class of people. They take the money, they move to the desert of Dubai or other parts, maybe Hungary, Portugal, Spain, or maybe they move to South America or Central America, or maybe North America, where things are better in terms of capitalistic values. Now, this could be an option if you really value material wealth, financial abundance, materialism, and these old values we were born in, we were raised again, and you continue wanting to hang on to that. But you could also say, and that's really what I personally experienced, like, wait a minute, I am from these lands. I was born here, I was raised here, my roots are here. And this is really where I feel energized. This is really the lands where I belong to. And this is where my tree of consciousness can grow his roots into the ground. Because your consciousness can only grow as far as your roots are grounded in the earth. Just like a tree, the branches of the tree can grow as far as the roots are grounded in the earth. Take like the world tree or the tree of life. The world tree represented the Norse spirituality, the Yggdrasil, with all the 9 different worlds. May that represent the 9 different states of consciousness that all exist within us. And if we really want to step into our true spirituality that was really rooted here on these lands, then we need to have a look into different options. If you decide, well, you know, I am not going to be the Indian of the West, where the Indians was basically being torn apart. They were being raped, slaughtered, murdered. They were being split from their lands. They were being sold out from their own lands by European colonization, invasion. And now it seems that we are facing, as Europeans, a similar threat. The threat is, of course, globalism, European Union, the agendas of the governments, the banks, the elites, the corporations running the world. And that's kind of the threat that we are currently facing. That's the common enemy that we currently have. You can try to, once again, go along with it and try to beat the system. But I think you can never really beat that system if you're trying to go along with it. What you also could do is decide, you know what, I will never be able to outrun this treadmill. I will never be able to outrun this rat race we are in. Like trying to get a bigger house and all of that. Some people also decide, you know what, instead of buying a house, I'm going to buy a boat. I'm going to buy a caravan. I'm going to live the van life. Or I'm going to buy an off-road vehicle with a roof tent and I'm going to travel around. Or like if you have a sailboat, maybe for €1,000 a year, you can put your sailing boat here in the harbor and you can live on a sailing boat instead of paying €1,000 a month for a tiny little piece of property. Another option is to dedicate your time and your energy towards building up a spiritual practice that is really native to the land you are living on. It's really to dive further into the ancestral lineage that has been passed over. And I've been started to speak a lot about these type of topics within my channel because that's kind of the work that I'm really dedicated to. Because that's a way to ground or grow our inner tree of consciousness by bringing in more of our ancestral lines. And what it means is you're building up your energy, you're building up your identity of where you really came from and where you really belong. And by building up that identity, then what you can start to see is that you can let the world pass by and see for what it is. And that's really learning about our cultural heritage. It's really about our spiritual heritage, what it is that our ancestors used to believe in, what were some of the things that they used to worship, what kind of spiritual practices that they had. all before the modern empire started to take over, because the history is simply repeating it right now. Before the Netherlands became Christian, because the Roman Empire invaded the northern parts of Europe, they brought over their Christian religions and Catholic that later turned out into different branches. Calvinism here in the Netherlands. All way before that, all these lands were first of all like the Germanic lands, who used to share a lot of common beliefs together with the Celts, Germanic paganism, Nordic paganism, who used to believe in different kind of gods, deities, spirit guides, spirit animals, and who had different kind of shamanic practices. If you really want to stay to the ground within this time, but you want to stay connected to your own land that you want to live on, I think this should be, or could be, a very important option in order to make a very strong and powerful identity. Know exactly who you are, so you can't be manipulated by the system. And also, this could also be a way for accepting and embracing that perhaps we are moving into a time where our luxuries and comforts will be stripped away from us. And if you hang your whole identity against all these luxuries and comforts like you have, like, oh, you know, I drive a BMW, I drive a Mercedes, and this is now all my identity. If all these things are being stripped away from you, then it's the time when people start to go within themselves. Like, who am I really as a person? Like, what is it that really runs through my veins that has been given to me by my ancestors? And I think this is a very beautiful time that we live in. It's a major challenge that is knocking on our doors, and that's why this might be an invite for us to really to bring in all these cultural things that has been created before us. Here in the Netherlands, we have so many things to be proud of. Our maritime history, the times of the VOC, the East Indian Company, the West Indian Company, of where our merchant traders and sailors used to go out on the open seas, on our oceans. Imagine the kind of trials and tribulations they had to fear. Or you go further into far more pre-medieval times, or think about our Nordic ancestors, the Vikings, who used to go on a tiny little longship out on the North Sea. I mean, right now we have 4 or 5 before here. It means right now we have a hurricane on the Atlantic Ocean. I work in the maritime industry as a surveyor. I come on board vessels for doing all sorts of vessel inspections, and I see the fear that these seamen have, and although they are on major ships from hundreds of meters of long, they are praying to Jesus Christ for their journeys, and they are terrified leaving the port of going out on the open Atlantic Ocean, because they know, and although they might be safe on the ship, they know they will not be able to sleep for days or weeks on end crossing the Atlantic Ocean, which is of course a terrifying thing, because you will suffer from sleep deprivation. And when you have all these comforts stripped away from you, you're going to pray to some sort of God. You're going to believe in something that is greater than you. You start to surrender that we are this tiny little drop of water or tiny little drop of consciousness that wants to be part of a bigger ocean, that wants to reunite with something that is bigger, that is greater outside. So this is the time to be strong and grounded and integrated, develop a new kind of identity where we can bring in of different elements from our ancestors, so we won't be affected that much. We can tune into, let's say, a warrior spirit that is very much needed right now. We can open up the kingdom of the heart that exists within us, and also we simply won't be affected or manipulated by all the outside forces that are raging over our lands right now as a new kind of empire or a new kind of global threat humanity is facing. Because, face it or not, we are at the bottom of this pyramid scheme. and that's why we can integrate more. If you want to share your thoughts, then of course feel free to drop a comment below, and I will continue to explore more of our ancient cultures from here, from the North European lands that we all share and we have in common, because there's so much richness in our history and spiritual cultural heritage that we can bring in. And if you want to embark on this journey together with me, then feel free to subscribe, hit the bell notification, like, leave a comment below, and I look forward to see you on one of my next videos. Take care for now, bye bye.